Well, you may not know this, but as a pastor, I'm asked to pray a lot. I'm asked to pray at family meals, church meetings, as well as formal and informal gatherings. And I will be the first to admit that there are times when I have next to nothing to say. In fact, there are times when I've offered spoken prayers on Sunday mornings that are less than original, less than inspiring, and often not very deep or thoughtful. Because let's face it, public prayer can be hard, even for those who have the credentials to say that we are professional Christians. Well, perhaps I'm not the only one at worship this morning who sometimes feels as though we have nothing worth saying when it comes time to pray. Maybe that's how the first followers feel when they asked Jesus to teach them how to pray. Maybe they had watched Jesus praying and realized how much it had done for him, and so they wanted to learn how to pray like Jesus did. Or maybe the first followers felt as uncomfortable, as uninspired, and just as awkward praying as many of us do. Well, whatever their reason may have been, the first followers asked Jesus to teach them how to pray. Now, Matthew's Jesus had already given his followers instructions on how to pray, and more importantly, how not to pray. Jesus said we could use prayer to make ourselves look good to others, or we could use prayer as a way to talk intimately with God. We could pray as a way to focus attention on ourselves, or we could pray in a way that focused attention on God. We could speak from our hearts using honest words and genuine feelings, or we could spout a lot of really fancy words that sound good but mean little to nothing. When I was a little girl, my Uncle Alan would volunteer to pray at all of the family dinners, and he would pray to such length that the food would grow cold before he finished. Now, I'm sure his prayers had meaning for him, but my cousins and I would sneak peeks at each other and then begin to giggle before he was halfway done praying. Our parents would shoot us dirty looks, but that would just cause us to giggle even harder. Now, Uncle Alan, bless his heart, pretended not to notice. But the prayer Jesus taught his followers was not long, and it was not about speaking things that meant a lot to them, but it was focused on God. And Jesus stated his feelings honestly, and Jesus' prayer was short. And by the way, if you prefer short, honest prayers, don't go to any clergy meetings. Now, I confess for more years than I care to admit, I thought the Lord's Prayer was truly intended to be the first prayer for the new Christian tradition. And I believed that until it finally sank into my thick skull that Jesus and his first followers never left Judaism to become something else. That was not their focus, it was not their goal. Jesus and his first followers were focused on learning how to grow closer to God. Their goal was to live in a way that brought the kingdom of heaven closer to their world, and their prayers were designed to help them do just that, to focus on God and to let the prayer and God change them in a way that helped them and their world grow closer to God. And perhaps that is the true purpose of all prayer. Perhaps we're to pray so that our thoughts and our words and our behaviors move us closer to God. For only when we are closer to God will we begin to live in a world that looks, sounds, and feels like the kingdom of heaven upon earth. One of the reasons we as Christians use the Lord's Prayer regularly is because it is the only prayer all Christian denominations have in common. It's, as United Methodist Christians, the Lord's Prayer is our only common prayer. The only one that we all use personally, at home, and with God. So we use the prayer to build our connection with God and with Christians in our room and around the world. I think we use the prayer because we want to remember we're not alone. And remembering we are not alone is an important reason for having a common prayer. Over the next 4 Sundays, We'll spend time learning more about the words Jesus said when his followers asked how to learn how to pray. We need to know more about what Jesus said so that we can understand the meaning of those words in today's world. Because without meaning, saying words becomes heaping up empty phrases. And Jesus warned his followers against doing that. Once we know why we say the prayers and what the words meant then and what they could mean for us now, we can decide if the regular saying of the Lord's Prayer helps us grow closer to the kingdom of God on earth, or whether we're simply going through the motions. Because, let's face it, the prophets had a lot to say about worship that consisted of only going through the motions, and what they had to say was not favorable. Now, I remember learning the Lord's Prayer as I sat with my family every Sunday in the row of chairs that were on the left side of the old brick church, right beside the organ, next to the fire station in the downtown building. In the days before I could read, I listened to the prayer being said around me. And I worked to memorize the words so that I could join in. One, because, well, I'm a bit competitive and I didn't want to be left out, and I wanted to learn the words faster than all my friends in my Sunday school class. But I also wanted to be part of the group of people around me. I wanted to feel like I belonged. I wanted to feel a little bit more grown up. And saying the words everyone else said felt like I got to be part of the congregation. My guess is, if we think about it, we will all remember how, where, and from whom we learned how to pray, whether it was the Lord's Prayer or something else. Saying the prayer, the Lord's Prayer, is an experience that links us to those who stood in for Jesus as they taught us how to say the prayer. Now, maybe we've taught someone else how to pray, and maybe we taught them how to say the Lord's Prayer. But like many who taught us the prayer, we may not actually know the meaning of the words for those who heard them first. And if we don't know the meaning of the words when they were first used, we probably have trouble knowing why those words matter today. So we're going to spend time this month remembering who taught us to pray and what the words of the Lord's Prayer actually mean. We're going to spend time reflecting on whether the words help us connect as a community, or whether we've said them so often with so little understanding that they'll never have meaning for us. We're going to spend time thinking about prayer. Now today, on this All Saints Sunday, we're going to focus on those people who taught us how to pray, the people of faith who kept the tradition of prayer alive for us, the people who taught us the Lord's Prayer. We're going to have the opportunity to remember those followers of Jesus who sat near and around us as we learned the words of the Lord's Prayer. And we're going to light candles to remember and to thank God for those people of faith who now live in the kingdom of God in heaven.